Hi everyone, it's Kerry with you today. A few weeks ago I popped up a journal with me and a lot of people were asking about the technique that I was using to cut the image out on the napkin. So I thought I'd come on today and explain a little bit more about that. Now I actually learnt these techniques from my mum, so I better say hi mum in case she's watching. And the little tool that I used was actually a brush pen. Now there's lots of different versions of this made by lots of different companies. This one happens to be made by Pentel, so the end of the pen or the brush is actually a little flexible brush. See if I can show you that a bit better. So it's quite flexible, and when I squeeze the barrel of the brush I get water coming out. So the barrel of the brush just contains water, and to refill the brush it just unscrews from the top and then you can fill it up with water. So these round brush type nibs come in a fine, medium and broad, but you can also get it in a flat type brush. But for the purpose of cutting the decoupage napkins, the round brush tip is probably better. So to begin with, we need to separate the top layer of our napkin from the bottom layers, because we only need the top layer. And once I've got my image selected, you just draw around the image with the water brush, but you don't want to place the line too close to the image because this is now so thin, this paper. As soon as I touch it with the brush, the water is going to wick out in both directions, and the water, it gives us the weak point on the napkin where it will tear and give us the feathered edge. So we want to make sure that that water isn't wicking too far into our actual image. So just draw a little bit further around than what you actually want. If you do get too much water coming out, you can just leave your napkin to dry before you try and pick it up off your table. Once you've drawn around the edge, you can just peel it away however you like, and then it gives you a nice feathered edge. You don't get a harsh cut line. So if I was to actually cut out the napkin image that I wanted, you get a very harsh line, and even when you apply that to a page you can still see it's quite harsh. It's not sort of feathery and smooth. So to attach the napkin to the page, I just use a glue stick, and it's actually a lot easier to apply the glue to the page than it is to try and apply the glue to the napkin because it's too fine. So once you've popped your glue on, just lay your image over the top and gently press it down. It doesn't matter that my glue is outside of the edge of my napkin because it will dry clear and you won't see it once it's dry. So then you can just sit that aside to dry. Another thing that is nice to do with the napkins is if you take some watercolour. Now I'm using Lindy's Magicals today, so this is a powder product, and you can just tap out a very small amount of the powder and activate it with water, and it gives you a watercolour. So I've already made up some brown and some pink, but when I've finished with these colours I can let the water evaporate and dry out in this palette, and then when I'm ready to use it again I can just reactivate it with water. So I'll show you one that I've actually used before. So it does look a little bit messy, but so these colours in here are dried powder. They will reactivate with water and I'll be able to use them again and again, so you don't waste any of your powders. They can just stay dried in the palette. So if I want to get a faux inked edge on this image, I can take my water brush and some of my colour that I have already prepared. Let's give that a bit of a mix, and I can actually draw, oops, I can actually draw around my image with my coloured water. And then gently just pull it apart. And then I'll take my coffee dyed paper again, apply some glue, pick up my image, and I can pop that down on top of my paper, and I've already got a faux inked edge on my image. So let's see if I can give you a bit of a closer look at that. And of course you could do that in any colour you like, so for example I've got some pink flowers here. Again, you just need the top layer of the napkin. Now with your water brush, because I've used this on the brown and I want to now use it in the pink, to clean off the brush you just squeeze a little bit of water from the barrel and wipe it onto a tissue, and the water will run clear, and then you're ready to go with your next colour. So I'll use this pink, just give it a bit of a mix, and then the same thing, I'm just going to draw around my flowers with my watercolour. So just popping some glue onto my book page. And you get a lovely soft edge on the book page with the pretty pink edge that matches our flowers. Sometimes when I'm using decoupage images, particularly things like faces or something that's got a lot of detail, and I'm using them on a book page, I find that the text showing through the image can sometimes be a little bit overpowering. So I'll show you a couple of ways that you can reduce that text a little bit but still have it being very obviously on a book page. I'll just see if I can show you up a bit closer. So you can see how that text is really sort of interfering with the detail of her face. So the first way I like to dull down the text in the background is actually with a little bit of gesso. So I just take my book page and I like to apply my gesso with a credit card or gift card, and that way I don't get any brush marks, and I can also scrape it quite thin so I can still see the text through the gesso. So I just scrape it on to my background, and you can leave it thick if you want to, or scrape it quite thin. If you know your image is going to be in a certain part of the page, you might want to have it a bit thicker in that area. Now if you're quick and you have your image ready, which I don't, but I'll quickly get one ready. So you can actually pop the image straight into the gesso and the gesso will act like your adhesive, and then you can just set that aside to dry. And you'll see that her face is a lot clearer, but you can still obviously tell that it's a book page. Okay. So sometimes I want to have the image on my book page, but I still want the text to be very heavily obvious around the image, so I don't want to block out the text with the gesso. So I take my image and I cut it out as we did before. Now I'm actually going to back this onto a piece of deli paper. If you're using deli paper, you need to test which side of your deli paper is resistant to water and which side will accept the water. So my deli paper is beading on the dull side, so I'm going to glue my image onto this slightly more shiny side. So popping my glue down. You could probably do this on tissue paper as well, but you would need to be careful because deli paper's just got a little bit more stamina when you're applying the water. It's not quite as fragile as tissue. So when I go around the edge with the water, this time I'm going just a little bit further out than I did with the napkin. And I'm letting the water bead quite a bit so it can soak into the deli paper, because this won't rip as easily as the napkin. So once my water sat there for a couple of seconds, I can start tearing it, and it will tear along my waterline. You do need to be a little bit more careful with it though. Okay, so I've got my image ready to go, but if I apply that directly onto my page now, you can still see a fair bit of text through her face. It's not as obvious as it was before, but it's still a little bit more than what I would like. So I turn my image over and I take a little bit of gesso and I just apply it to the back of her face area with my finger and sort of wisp it around the edges, because you don't want just a big white blob in the middle. And then I take some glue to my book page. Pop my image down. Now that little bit of a white edge that's around the image from the deli paper will sort of soften between where the image joins the book page, so you won't have like a really harsh line where the image is and then the book page starts. It'll just be a little bit of a more gradual blend. And you can see that the text is not very visible underneath her face now, so she's nice and detailed. But I still have the softness around the edge here where the deli paper meets the text and the image. Anyway, I hope you found that useful, and I hope that's answered the questions for the people that were asking about the water brush technique. It really does make a big difference when you're cutting out your napkins and gives them that nice wispy edge, and it's so much quicker than sitting there trying to tear them. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.